today is going to be part 2 of my medical school US residency type discussion video. I'm going to talk about what I did after I took step 1 all the way through to step 2, and then my clinical rotations, and then applying for the match. So I'm not sure if you guys watched the first video. If you didn't, then I'll have it linked up here. But I took step 1 after my year and a half of living on the island, and I scored a 220. Now, this is a very average score. This is not a great score, not a terrible score, but it's just in the middle. And what I did when I got that 220 was I made the commitment that I was going to work really hard on my clinical and core rotations. I accepted the score and I moved on. You got to take it and just keep going. So after you write step 1 is when you get the go ahead to start doing your clinical rotations. So I originally did my first clinical rotation in Chicago. Now, I know a lot of Caribbean schools send their students to Chicago to do their clinical rotations, and it's great because a lot of doctors are willing to take students in that area. But what I will say is that it is very saturated. So there's a lot of medical students from the Caribbean in Chicago. There are so many states in the US that you can go to for your clinicals, and I highly recommend that you ask your medical school if there's any other states you can go to, or maybe they don't recommend Chicago at all, I don't know. But there are states like New York, New Jersey, Atlanta, and so many others. I did one rotation in Chicago and there was 10 students in my one rotation. I was shocked and I just said, nope, that's not happening. My medical school gave me a few state options and I made the choice to move to Houston, Texas to complete my clinicals. I figured that is so far away. I really think there will be hardly any Caribbean medical students, and I was right. I got to have a very one-on-one experience with the doctors that I worked with, and I had the best time. It was such an amazing experience living in Texas. I highly recommend if anybody has the opportunity to go to the South. So I did all my core rotations in Houston, Texas, and a few of my electives as well. But then I did go back to Chicago to do the rest of my electives because I did drive all across America, and I figured that I would be closer to Canada if I finished my clinicals in Chicago, and then I was able to just, drive back to Toronto without any issues. So I wanted to be closer to home towards the end of my 4th year, and then I was preparing to write step 2 CS and CK. So I took my step 2 CS in Chicago, and that was a difficult exam as well, but I got through it. You can take the test also in Houston. There were 4 testing centers that were offering that exam. I know it's been canceled, but the exam originally was in Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, and maybe Pennsylvania. I'm not 100% sure, the last one. But I took it in Chicago and I had a great experience, and the actors were all really great, and it was a well done exam, and I don't have anything much to say about it, but thankfully I passed. And after that, I headed home. So I wrote my step 2 CK in Canada because you can write these tests at all of the different prometric centers. So I took 2 months to take my step 2 CK after I graduated from my rotations. And I took that exam and I thought I did really well. The Usmles are very difficult exams. So step 1 was really, really challenging. And people say step 2 is a little easier. I didn't think so. The Usmles are really good at writing difficult questions that when you read it, you open the block and you look at it and you're like, oh my God. So it's different content, but it's still not much easier in my opinion. So I took that exam in 2017, I believe, and I got 235. So 235 in the world of step 2 is a average score. It's not great, but it's not terrible. It's just right in the middle. And I got a little worried because there's so many Caribbean graduates, and who's to say that when a program looks at my application, why would they pick me when there's hundreds of other applicants who are American and they don't have to worry about giving them a visa or traveling and, interviewing them from so far away and all this kind of stuff. So I got worried, but when I applied for the residency match, there was a few strategies that I did which I felt were really, really helpful and really effective. And these are the things I'm going to tell you guys today. At my school, I asked if they could give me a list of all of the previous graduates from that school in the last couple years who had matched into a U.S. residency, and I wanted to know specifically what were the names of those programs. So they provided me a list, and what I did was I actually individually went on all of those programs' websites and I looked at, was it true that that resident had gone to that program? A lot of these programs will have the names and photos of these residents on their websites. So I confirmed that it was true. And what I did was I not only highlighted the program itself, but I also made a mental note that the state accepted a non-US IMG. So like I mentioned in my last video, the medical school I went to was not accredited. So it limited the amount of states that I could apply to in the U.S. residency. There is something called the California list. The California list is a list that accredited medical schools are allowed to apply to. I recommend you go through and find the full list of states that are on the California list. And only certain medical schools are allowed to apply to all of those states so broadly. I looked at the states that were on that list of residents that had graduated from my school, and I made a highlight of which states they had those programs were in as well. So I made myself a list. I took all the list of all 50 US states and I deleted all of the ones that did not have any residents that had been from my school. When you were at the time of applying on ERAS, ERAS is the electronic system for applying to residency in the US. You have access to every single program in every single state on that website, and they charge you per application. So hypothetically, somebody could apply to every residency program on that website as long as you have the money for it. So you have to be strategic with which states and which programs you want to apply to. So what I did was I applied to the programs that were specific on the list I was given. I also applied to other programs in the states that those previous programs were at, because on those websites you can look at and confirm, are there non-US IMGs that have been applied and accepted to those programs as well. And what I did was, if I couldn't find any information on it at all, I tried to look at, was this a community rural-based program or was it a more urban university-based program? US IMGs are more likely to be able to be accepted at university programs because, again, they don't have to do a lot of the extra things that are involved in taking on a non-US resident, which would be, visa applications and certain grants and things like that. If you're a non-US IMG from a Caribbean school or from a school abroad, it's really in your benefit to try and target community rural-based programs. So one way to do it is to look up all those programs individually and just look at where are they located, how far are they from a major city in the state that they're at, and you can kind of judge based on their website and their information. Is it a community program or is it a larger university-based program? So that's what I did. And I applied to God knows how many programs, only in family medicine. And I applied and waited for the interviews. And the interviews came a few months later, and I interviewed at those programs. I drove all across the US going to those different places, waited for the match. So another thing that's important that you can do is, if you know any resident that's already in a program, ask them for a referral, ask them for some help. Ask them if they can talk to their program director for you, and if they're looking to hire a resident from that school, or they will consider looking at your ERAS application even though you didn't apply there or you didn't interview there. I really suggest you ask your friends and other people that you know that are already in programs. Maybe you're not their friend, but there is no harm in asking. The worst thing they can say is no, but there's no harm in trying. One thing that I didn't do, but I highly recommend now that I am a resident and I know kind of on the back end how things work, a lot of programs don't advertise this, but programs have something called off-cycle positions. So an off-cycle position means that a program can reserve some spots in their academic year for a resident or residents to come on at a different point in the year. So all residents are supposed to start on July 1st of that year. But some residents, for whatever reason, if they don't match or if they have other life circumstances and they're not able to start July 1st, they can actually start at a different point in the year. So my program specifically takes on 2 residents every year, and they are supposed to start on December 1st. So I highly suggest you look at programs that offer off-cycle positions. And if you don't match that year, you can have a backup plan of applying to the off-cycle position. Now, the off-cycle positions are not on ERAS. ERAS is for the US match that happens every March of that year. But the off-cycle positions are job positions that are offered by programs, so you have to apply to that program directly. And that program will interview you privately, and they will hire you if you meet their qualifications. A lot of programs take residents based on their current residents' referrals. So if you can find that information out, it might take a little bit of digging, but if you can get that information and you can apply to off-cycle positions, that was amazing. You know, you wouldn't have to wait a whole year after to reapply to the ERAS system when you could potentially apply to an off-cycle position and get in and start just a little bit more than 6 months after your original start date if you were to match. So there are a lot of interesting things you can do in order to strategize and get yourself in the best position to get a residency. I've said this already, that I'm not the smartest person in the world. I'm hardworking, I'm dedicated, and I use the resources that I had in order to get the most information that worked for me. And I tried to do the best I could with my strategies and my circumstances in order to get the residency I wanted. And you can do that too. That is the whole point of my channel, is just trying to give as much information out there as I can while I'm still working as a resident. I'm going to be graduating soon, and I really want to be able to help whoever is watching me. If I can help just one person, I will be so happy. So I hope you enjoyed my little chit chat all about my medical school experience and what it was like to get through my course and then matching into a US residency. If you have any questions though, please let me know and I'll try my best to answer them. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.